Welcome to the Rink Rock Podcast right here on Forever Blueshirts. I'm Jim Cerney. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Certainly a lot going on in the world of the Rangers as we head really down the stretch. 12 games remaining in the regular season. And I wrote a column today over at Forever Blueshirts where I referenced the Killers, Mr. Brightside, like trying to find a bright side, even though, first of all, I get that the song, it's a sarcastic title. It's not really about a bright side because there is no bright side if you listen to the lyrics in the song. But all right, I'm getting too much in the weeds here, but got it in my head. I'm like, all right, I'll be Mr. Brightside. Come up with, what is the bright side for the Rangers with 12 games to go and, 3-game losing streak and, them falling out of a playoff spot and not able to win games at Madison Square Garden and had one of their worst performances, of the season on Tuesday. Tried to come up with, some positive things. So let's see if I can come up with some positive for you today, as well as breaking down a few things, just a couple quick hits, go through a bunch of quick hits as we set you up for the weekend. Really a massive game Saturday at Madison Square Garden, that matinee against the Vancouver Canucks, right? Jeez. Two teams in similar positions, right on the outside of the 8th spot, the cutoff line in their respective conferences, the Rangers in the East, the Canucks in the West. Two teams with talented rosters, two teams with high expectations going into this season, scratching and clawing, trying to, stay alive in their respective playoff races down the stretch here, going head to head. I mean, really, you should have two desperate teams Saturday at the Garden. Should set up to be a really, really good game, but should. How many times did I say should there? Should be this, should be that, should be, should. Well, Rangers proved this week that things that should be aren't always what they are. And certainly that was Tuesday night at the Garden. I mean, a complete non-competitive effort by the Rangers, and stunning. And really, you go down the list of who to blame for that, right? And really for the season as well. But who to blame for that? Well, Peter Laviolette's got to wear a lot of that. At the end of the day, I always blame the players more. Always. Because they're the ones that physically go out there and can make this, that, or the other thing happen. But how can your team go out there? Or what is it about the core of your team that they can go out there and be as uncompetitive with their effort in the middle of the playoff race as the Rangers were Tuesday night against Calgary Flames? And it was all set up for them too. Calgary got smoked the night before, smoked by the Toronto Maple Leafs, got in at 2-3 in the morning in New York. Probably the tired team, had to play their backup goalie, not Dustin Wolf, their stud rookie. Yeah, it was all it's all there for the Rangers, right? One team though came out hungry and maintained that hunger for 60 minutes, and it wasn't the New York Rangers. It was a complete embarrassment, a shameful performance by the Rangers on Tuesday. And I was just on. I just did a spot with Brandon London at the New York Post. The video that's gonna air over on their site today. And he asked me, well, what'd you think of how the Rangers rebounded Thursday from that? Was that a better loss than the one on Tuesday? My response was, well, sure, they played better. Sure, they competed. Sure, they did the things they were supposed to do. They actually showed up, put forth an effort. Actually looked like a team that was interested in pushing for a playoff spot. Things that you would expect. Things you have to expect from a team, from a professional team, professional athletes, not to mention talented professional athletes. That's like the bare minimum of what you expect, but they got it, and they played better too. I mean, there were stretches there. They took it to Toronto. But at the end of the day, it was the same things that for 70 games have submarined their season. Defensive zone breakdowns, beaten off the rush, turnovers in their own end, losing their men in the offensive zone, getting beaten to the net. Keiondre Miller getting beaten to the net by Bobby McMahon on that 2-1 goal. And then that's another thing too. The goals at the beginning of periods in the first minute or two, the goals at the end of periods in the final minute or so. The Rangers scored a massive goal to tie that game against Toronto. Massive goal. Instead of going into the first intermission down 1-0, they tie it with under a minute to go. And you know what? Sometimes some goals carry more weight. You get it late in a period like that. Now you're 1-1. But sometimes who scores the goal carries a lot of weight too. It wasn't Artemi Panarin. It wasn't one of the big goal scorers. It wasn't JT. It wasn't Mika. Adam Fox even, right? No, it was Will Borgen. It's one of your, just meat and potato guys. Your defensive defenseman just wires one home off the post and in. And you're tied 1-1. Right? Everything should have been going great. Garden's finally alive. And then you allow a goal with under 10 seconds to go in the period. Rangers even won that faceoff. The faceoff was in their own end after they iced it. Oh, talk about small things becoming big things. You ice the puck with 10 seconds to go. Then you win the faceoff. You lose the puck. Puck is sent towards the net. And Keiondre Miller lost his man on the way to the net. Bobby McMahon tips it home. And it's 2-1. Oof. And Artemi Panarin scores early in the second period, and you're 2-2. You're right there. You got it back again. The crowd's back in it. Rangers just couldn't find a way. Couldn't find a way from running into their own troubles, of their own creation. Not to take anything away from Toronto, who certainly, played well, and you give them an inch, they'll take a mile with that offense. Matthew Knees ends up scoring the game winner. John Tavares ends up scoring 2. Pretty much all off mistakes, defensive breakdowns, because that's who the Rangers are. That's their DNA. Even if they make the Stanley Cup playoffs, that's their DNA. Where are they going? Where are they going with that team? And, I should be promoting my stories, right? This is, we're on Forever Blueshirts, the Rink Rock Podcast on Forever Blueshirts. I should be promoting my stories, but I'm going to throw one out here because it kind of stuck with me this morning. I was reading Arthur Staple, a great reporter for The Athletic, his latest column. And he said a lot of things about the Rangers, a lot of things that, I believe as well. But the one point that stuck out to me that I am really on is, he goes, the Rangers are nowhere right now. They're nowhere. Sure, they could still make the playoffs. Sure, they may not make the playoffs. They may not deserve to make the playoffs, right? Mediocre team, bunch of mediocrity, mediocre teams fighting for that 8th playoff spot, though the Rangers didn't show much fight on Tuesday. But Arthur's right. They're nowhere. Where are they? They're nowhere. They're not going to make a run. It's a fallacy. As great as Igor was on Tuesday, that's a lot of heavy lifting. And there are guys that look tired too. Like JT Miller looks tired. There's a lot of weight on his shoulders. There were high expectations when he came over from Vancouver on January 31st. And he's lived up to those expectations, and he's helped lift the game of a lot of his teammates. Certainly brought a different vibe to the team, a different grit to the team, a little different energy inside that dressing room. Certainly has lifted Mika Zibanejad, but he looks tired. I don't know if it's the Four Nations, how hard he went in that tournament. I don't know if it's the weight, the pressure that he's carrying here. I don't know if it's the mental toll. He's had a rugged season. Everything he went through in Vancouver and trade rumors and the issues with Elias Pettersson, his name, being in Vancouver hockey columns in their newspapers and blogs and everything, on a daily basis. He's like a really private guy. I know JT from when I worked with the Rangers. He's a private guy. He doesn't want to be front and center. He just wants to grind and play. He's got his family. Those are the things that are important to him. He doesn't necessarily want to be the spokesperson. He certainly doesn't want to have his page, his face splashed all over the Vancouver newspapers and everything. That's the way it was. And that took a toll on him. And we saw he took a leave of absence from the Canucks earlier this season. You just wonder at this point, if he's just ground down so much, and he plays such a tough style anyway. Anyway, he looks tired. The Rangers looks like the team DNA is the team DNA when it comes to defensive zone structure or lack thereof. Their inability to play that man-on-man defense that Peter Laviolette wants. It's tough. So, you try and look for something positive. What's the positive here? Well, I put it out there that, to me, one of the positive things for the Rangers is that there's no team that they're fighting for a playoff spot here that you say, oh, yeah, they're going to run away with it, in the final 3-4 weeks of the season. Boy, they're pulling away. You kind of thought Ottawa was that team, and then they are. They're 3 points up, for the first wild card, and 5 points up on the Rangers and Islanders, who are tied, in essence, for 9th place. So they pulled away for a little bit, but man, they've lost 2 in a row now. Got their teeth kicked in by Vancouver on Thursday night. Not by Vancouver, by Colorado on Thursday night. So they're probably the best of the lot. Then Columbus, Detroit. We talked about this last week. They're withering in this playoff race. They're withering. They don't seem up to it. And that's no knock on either one, especially Columbus, man. We expected nothing from Columbus this season. And yet here they are. They're still in the mix. And they still may end up being a playoff team. But you talk about tired, mentally, physically, a team that maybe really pushed well beyond all expectations and now just don't have enough kick left for the stretch drive. That's the way they look right now. Detroit, same thing, a little different situation as a team that appeared to be further along than Columbus. But, the Red Wings, what have they lost? 8 of 10 or whatever down the stretch here. Those two teams really wilting at the worst time of the season. Similar to Philadelphia last year, how they fell apart down the final few weeks of the regular season. So they're still in the mix, though. But, if you're the Rangers, you scared about those teams? No, you shouldn't be. The Islanders are smoking hot now. It looked like the Rangers had put them to bed, a few weeks ago with those 2 wins, one at home, one on the road. The Islanders have resurrected. They've had more lives than, the Undertaker in the WWE, just coming back to life out of nowhere. They're actually percentage points ahead of the Rangers right now in the race. But really, do you buy the Islanders? You think they're going to keep that momentum going? Or they've won 3 in a row. They're going to lose 3 in a row. They certainly could. Mediocrity again, of this group fighting for that spot. Montreal, they're in the second wild card right now. They gained a point. They fought back. They got the game to overtime against the Islanders Thursday night. They ended up losing, but they got a point. So, moved another point ahead of the Rangers in the playoff race. Picked up a point on Ottawa, who's the first wild card. But to me, that's the Rangers' best hope. Yeah, they got to start winning games. Starts with Vancouver on Saturday. Then you go on that West Coast road trip. You have to beat San Jose, obviously. You got to beat Anaheim, even though they're an improved team. You got to beat them. You got to win at least 2 games on that trip. And if you beat Vancouver on Saturday, then you've won 3 out of 4. That's 6 points. And you know what? Who knows where you are then in the mix? Because again, these other teams, I don't have faith in them stringing together big winning streaks either. So you win 3 out of 4, you're right there in the mix if you're the New York Rangers. Now, the not bright side is that the Rangers have played 2 games more than each of their competitors here. The Islanders, Montreal, even Ottawa, they played 2 games more. Columbus, Detroit. So that certainly works against the Rangers, as well. All right. Let me cycle back. Mention Peter Laviolette. And the fans booing. Boomer Esiason calling for his head. Ranger fans want a scalp right now. They've wanted one for a while. Jacob Trouba, he was traded, so he's no longer the whipping boy. Mika Zibanejad has picked up his play. He's less of a whipping boy. Keiondre Miller, boy, he takes a lot of blame, and rightfully so. When he's bad, and he's been bad quite a bit this season, but when he's bad, he is bad, right? Let me hold off on Peter Laviolette for a minute, since I mentioned Keiondre Miller. Do you really have the faith to sign him to a long-term contract worth big money? He's a RFA with arbitration rights at the end of the season. Typically, this is the offseason where you lock up a guy like Keiondre Miller. He's been a top 4 defenseman ever since he entered the NHL. Guy who had 40 points a couple seasons ago. He's not producing anymore offensively. Right? He's not getting the numbers. Defensively, his game, I mean, it is crazy. It's like the stock market, unfortunately, how the stock market's been. It goes way up, comes way down. And that's him. That's on a game-to-game basis, sometimes an in-game basis. And you can see, some smart, strong defensive plays by him. And then you can see him end up in no man's land, or, terrible turnover, like in overtime against Ottawa. You remember that one, gift wrapping the win for the Senators. Or have a night like last night against Toronto, the -3, when he earned that -3. Earned it. So, do you invest in him? If you're the Rangers, you probably want another bridge deal with him, but then you're going to walk him to unrestricted free agency. And to be honest, Keiondre Miller's side is probably saying, no, we want our long-term deal now. We want our 5 years, 6 years now. I don't think he's getting more than that. But they want it now, which comes with big money. You're going to pay him $6 million, $6.5 million, $7 million? At one point, we were thinking that he was going to make $7.5 million. Who knows? A couple of years ago, you're thinking, you got to tie this guy up. He is a key part of the core. You feel that way now? I don't know. These last 2 seasons, even last year when things were much better for the team overall, Keiondre Miller's offensive numbers came back down. His defensive play was spotty. This year, defensive play has been much more spotty. Now the entire team, that goes in line with the rest of his teammates. But there's been far more down times this season for him defensively. Far fewer times where he has stepped up and just been a massive difference maker that you thought he could be. Where, boy, man, he was one of the best guys on the ice tonight. Did you see him in the defensive zone? See how quickly he got the puck out of the end? You see how he used the body? See how he got the puck up ice? Started that transition game. How many nights have there been like that? There were in the past. But how many nights like that for Keiondre Miller this season? There have been some. And in fact, recently, it's been all right. He's had some good moments and played a lot of heavy minutes when Adam Fox was out injured. Then you see a night like last night and you go, oh my gosh, you kidding me? So you can invest in him. And then if you don't, what are you going to do? You're going to trade him? There are going to be a lot of teams lined up interested in Keiondre Miller. Still at age 25, there's a lot of interest in Keiondre Miller around the league. Okay, so if you trade him, he's one of your valuable chips. If you trade him, maybe you get an NHL forward back. Maybe you try and recoup a first round pick. Maybe you look more towards the future with what you get back from him. Maybe part of the return you get from him, from whoever it is, maybe you try then to make another trade to get a left shot defenseman that's going to fit in your top 4. Bowen Byram, anybody? I don't think Buffalo wants another defenseman, another young defenseman that needs to get paid. So I don't think that he would want Keiondre Miller. They've already invested heavily in their young defenseman, and it looks like they're not going to invest in Bowen Byram. We'll see. But the rumors are that he's probably going to get traded. Is he a guy you're interested in? Or do you keep whatever assets you get, by trading Keiondre Miller, and you try and sign a free agent? You sign a Jacob Chikrin. Going to cost a lot more than Keiondre Miller, but deservedly so. But is that the route you want to go down? You want to give Braden Schneider a chance on the left side? Our Tom Castro wrote a story about that the other day. Hey, let's see Braden Schneider and Adam Fox on the top pair down the stretch. Let's give it a look before you have to make big decisions in the off season. If you do that, then maybe you look for a third pair right-hand shot defensively. If you move Miller, then you get a right-hand shot defenseman to play on the third pair, and Braden Schneider kind of becomes the Keiondre Miller on the left side, playing on his offside, which he's played well on this season. In any case, the point is, do you want to invest in Keiondre Miller? Well, that might be the most difficult decision Chris Drury has this offseason. The other one is what to do with the coach. And again, I circle back. I guess we've mentioned it about 3 times already. Peter Laviolette. Keep him. Stanley Cup winning coach. Looked like a pretty darn good coach last year. Why? If the guys are tuning him out, why? Is it because his system's tough to play? It's tough to commit to that 1-3-1 and play man-to-man D. That's tough. And you need the right personnel for it too. But guys have to commit to it. The Rangers committed to it last year, in part because of the failure in the playoffs back in 2023 that got Gerard Gallant fired. So they bring in the new coach, new system. That team bought in from the top on down. Guys like Mika Zibanejad and all that. Guys that you question their defensive commitment this season. You didn't for the most part last year, did you? Because they bought in. They have not bought in this season. And I mentioned Zibanejad. He's a key part of that. He's far from the only one. And listen, God bless Artemi Panarin and his 11-game point streak, and obviously being the most consistent offensive player they've had for years. You can just put his name in the lineup and know that you're going to get a point-a-game player. And better, 120 points last year, but at least a point-a-game player. But man, can he be atrocious defensively? We saw that against Toronto last night. They've got a bunch of guys like that. Can't love Alexis Lafreniere's defensive game either. So is it the coach, though? What did the coach do that he's getting tuned out? How did he go from being this great coach? He could have been coach of the year last year, win the Jack Adams. He didn't, but he could have. What did he do that makes this team tune out? Except that maybe the guys don't want to work as hard because it's a lot of hard work to play Peter Laviolette's style of hockey. It's a winning style. It was a winning style last year, not all the way through. And part of that is because of personnel. That's a Chris Drury thing. The roster. But are the Rangers going to get another coach fired? Is this core going to get another coach fired? And if so, who's the next coach? I know the popular thing to say is Joel Quenneville. He's been cleared. He's available now. He's got more rings than Peter Laviolette has. Okay. I'm not against that choice, if that's the choice. But you bring in another guy, keep climbing the ladder, one successful coach after another, getting bombed out of there by this core. Because at the end of the day, that might be your biggest issue. Chris Drury's got his hands full this summer, and we're going to have a lot of time to talk about it. We'll break it down on Forever Blueshirts for sure. We'll break it down on the Rink Rock Podcast for sure. But you still got 12 games to go. You still got a heartbeat. You didn't have much of a heartbeat on Tuesday, but you still have a heartbeat, right? You're still alive. Got to beat Vancouver on Saturday. It's got to start there. By the way, side note, that Vancouver game should have been Filip's return to Madison Square Garden, a guy that I think really respected and a popular guy among the fans, certainly among his teammates in the Rangers organization. And it's devastating to know that he has sustained another concussion, that he is missing games. Hopefully he'll be okay, short-term and long-term. Talking about a guy's life here, not just his career. But it's such a shame that Filip won't be back with Vancouver on Saturday. So it's kind of a side note. Big game for JT Miller. You want to see him shot like a cannonball out of a cannon? That's going to be JT Miller tomorrow afternoon at about 1:05 p.m., right? because he's going to want to show Vancouver something. I want to see the matchup, him and Elias Pettersson. Pettersson, not exactly known for his heartbeat. JT is. Let's see if that spices things up a little bit. Maybe gets JT going, maybe gets the team going as well. Rangers got to win. Can't lose another game. Can't get swept on this 4-game homestand. Need the win. Then you go to California. Like I said, try and win 2 out of 3 there. Not try. You need to win 2 out of 3 there. Got the Los Angeles Kings in the mix as well. Can win there. That's the toughest of the 3 games by a long shot. But you got to take 2 out of 3 at least on that trip. Then you come home and you should still be in the thick of it. Should be in a better place now than you are, but okay. And, the rest of the chips, they fall where they may. These teams have games in hand on the Rangers. It's going to fall where it may. When we reconvene next week, we'll see where the Rangers are. Certainly talk about it. We'll get into, your email questions and everything. I was going to do more with that today, but I did it in a column earlier this week where I talked about mediocrity as opposed to parity and how they go hand in glove in my eyesight, in my thinking. But there was a fan who disagreed with me. I thought it led to a good column. Loved the exchange on Twitter or X, with that fan. But we're going to have more of that this week. More interaction on social media, more interaction on the Forever Blue Shirts website, and of course here on the Rink Rock Podcast as well. Make sure to subscribe both to the audio version or the video version. Video, of course, on YouTube, audio at all your favorite outlets where you get where you listen to your podcast. Please like and subscribe, and listen. Hang in there. Not what do they say on Monty Python? I'm not dead yet. Well, Rangers aren't out dead yet. They're not finished yet. There's still a heartbeat, but they really need to start stringing together some wins. So let's see where it goes from there. We'll reconvene next week. And thanks for tuning in this week on the Rink Rock Podcast.